It's on you now. Video's looking at you. You're the only one here. Make a face.
But talking, we can hear you.
I'm not close and you do
We're recording today.
Chad Barnes joined.
As an attendee, needs to be a panelist.
As an attendee.
I'll tell Steph when she comes in.
Jackie. Jackie tomorrow.
No, she was here this afternoon. She worked 12 to 4 while we had to cover for the voting time. Oh, you need
I
something?
need video.
Executive. You
For what?
Separate WebEx.
You need it done tomorrow?
Tomorrow.
I have to do the Thursday. How's that going?
What about tomorrow?
Because I can call her. I'm sure she can show me whatever her method is. Wish I had known that today. I had her do a few of them for me and leave them for me.
I had everything today. I just figured she wasn't in tomorrow.
Tuesday, Thursday, Friday.
Discuss it tomorrow.
Yeah. Wait, you're like, I'm just gonna go get it.
No, I gotta go.
When do you plan on using it? Thursday? Not at the moment. You want to use it Thursday?
We had to pick it up tomorrow though.
Well, I can text her now and tell her to call me in the morning so that she can help me. Because I don't think Eileen knows how to do it.
Probably not.
So
I can email you the quote.
Let me ask you a question. I know we.
because I don't know if she has anything home where she can be on Envisions and then I can just go on internet.
I'll send it both of you right now.
I need to come live again for 24 minutes.
We should say. Yeah, I was saying here was. I assume we have to go down what.
Tell people, I'm not gonna help it. So I just say, you, street, as I said.
Austin was looking for you. And he said that Chad had joined his next one. I don't know.
Can you see the Kevin's on?
Then we'll let you know until you pick it
I
up.
said it to me.
Yeah, he.
I was trying to add him, but it's not.
I think he just tried to call me, I guess. I gotta go down to Fox Sauces, so we're gonna go with the meeting. So you say we're going to executive session. You cross that line.
Right.
He has to start.
Okay. All right, so we're back now. We had a little bit of the computer, the technology issues because we're doing all this over WebEx and we were going to
This
have
meeting is being recorded.
executive session at the prior to the regular meeting. But before the regular meeting, which are we live now?
This is being recorded and I believe we're on YouTube too, right, Austin?
Austin, we're live now? Okay, so we're live now. So I'm going to call the public hearing to order on the 2021 budget hearing. So I call the meeting to order. It is 6:06 on the 2nd of June, 2020. Evacuation procedures are out this door to the left and another left. Evacuation procedures at home, you guys know what to do. So we're going to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we'll do a roll call, but I see, I don't know if I'm missing some people on the internet here, but it doesn't look like all our board members are here yet. And they're not required to be here for the public hearing. Joe's gonna go over the budget. And I don't know if we've received any email questions. How is that gonna work with questions for the budget?
Any questions on the budget should be emailed the clerk at 518-568-7280.
So you could text that or call that 7280.
That's the office line.
That's the office
Yeah.
line.
And then they can email me my email address.
Okay, so they could email you live in a sense right now.
I don't think I would get it because everybody else would be set up as an attendee and none of that information is given out.
No,
But
oh,
they could email my email account.
right. So any of our email accounts, what I want to say is if there's anybody watching live and you think of a question right now, you can email any of our accounts, which is basically our name.oesj.org at oesj.org. So neil.clark@oesj.org, Janine.Kariga@oesj.org. Any administrator or board member that you know their name, you can email us right now. And if you're watching, we can possibly get the email and answer any questions you might have. So having said all that, let's do a quick roll call. And then we'll let Dr. Nattel do his thing on the budget. So we'll do that stuff, roll call.
Dean Handy? Dean Handy?
Yeah, I'm here.
Jeremy Brundick?
Here.
Neil Clark?
Here.
Sarah Barnes?
Here.
Sue Salmons?
Here.
Shelley Walrath?
Here.
Chad Barnes? I know they said Chad was attending as an attendee. I'm making him a panelist, but I don't know if he has.
All right, we're working on getting Chad on here. It sounds like he's watching and we're working on setting him up. Was that you, Chad?
Yeah, I'm here.
Got it?
Oh, there he is. All right, so we got everybody. I didn't see y'all there originally, so sorry, where'd you leave off? Janine Kariga, Adam Harris.
Oh, yep. Administrators, Joseph Patel,
Here.
Adam Herrick,
Here.
Janine Kariga,
Here.
Ted Kariga,
Here.
Billy Joe Stallman, here. Greg Roth is here. Jeff Swartz,
Here.
Kyle O'Brien,
Here.
Stephanie Bach here.
Kyle. Okay, right to A, proposed budget presentation by the superintendent of schools, Dr. Joseph Nattel.
Good evening, everyone. Again, if you have any questions on the budget, probably the quickest way to get an answer is if you email the clerk, stephanie.bonk@oesj.org, or joseph.nattel, which is I, @oesj.org. Taking a look at the 2021 proposed budget, this evening, we first talk about the major additions that are in this budget. The additions that are included in this budget is a 0.5 business teacher, which basically takes a half-time business teacher currently on staff and making them full-time because we're unable to find someone just half-time alone. The person was not interested in doing half-time. Custodial maintenance grounds training only to get some training regarding cleaning and maintenance and how you should clean certain areas, lavatories, particularly important during the COVID-19 challenges we have. Bus dispatcher upgrade, which is an additional $5,000. The total additions are $36,378. Some of the major reductions that we've had in this budget, significant health insurance savings because we changed to another plan, which is much, much more economical and still provides good benefits for all of our staff in the district. Everyone would be on the same health plan. Elimination, reduction of a special ed teacher through retirement, a reduction of a math teacher that had resigned that we will not be replacing. BOCES services, various services, some dealt with tuition adjustments, enrollment in different programs, as well as just some charge reductions through BOCES itself as a result of them preparing their final budget. Software for the business office is being eliminated. That's really, there are other means for them to do their various finance objectives or calculations. District painting and transportation projects are being eliminated because they are part of the new bond issue that was approved in February. So that's a savings to the taxpayers that's immediate. Equipment reduction at the elementary and junior senior high school. That doesn't mean they have zero equipment, but we've cut it at least in half. Summer curriculum and Common Core has been reduced by $10,000, still leaving some appropriation to do some summer work, particularly as we prepare for our students coming back. Maintenance shift leaders, which we no longer have, we've eliminated those. It's a $6,000 appropriation, and some discretionary funds and an administrator's contract that was renegotiated has also been eliminated. So total reductions in the budget from 1920 to 2021, these are reductions from the current budget this year, is $675,634. That's significant. However, we should also be aware that due to the financial pressures that are brought on by this pandemic, policymakers, meaning state policymakers, froze state aid for districts for the 2021 school year and granted the governor the authority to adjust state aid to school districts in these different 3 intervals of time. April 30th, which they did not make any adjustment, primarily because they're waiting to see if there is any federal assistance. And until they know that, my guess is they will not make any adjustments. So we may even skid by the June 30th date, but December 30th, 31st probably will be a tell-all in terms of any need for further reductions in state aid, not only to schools, but other localities as well, anyone who gets aid from the state budget. So what does the future hold in that sense? As a result of those deficit review points, again, June coming up and December 31, midway through the year, there may be further reductions in our budget as a result of further reductions in state aid by the state of New York. We'll hope for some federal stimulus. There is some optimism on that. How much it will be is the unknown, of course. And depending on if and when, that will result in further cuts. The later in the school year, the more challenging the cuts will be. Future, if there are additional cuts, this district is going to have to look at future areas for considerations for reducing this budget. There may be some savings in hiring breakage. We have not hired all of our staff for next year due to replacements. So they may be hired at a lesser amount than people that are leaving. There may be cuts in non-instructional staff as well as in instructional staff. Projects in buildings and grounds could be reduced. Purchasing certainly would be reduced and controlled much greater than is approved in this budget. Conferences and field trips will have limitations, and there certainly could be an impact on a lot of the extracurricular activities as well as the athletic programs. There could be some consideration for looking at revenue increases by tapping reserve funds, increasing fund balance, the employee retirement system contribution reserve, as well as our debt service fund. Again, that will depend on the extent of the cuts and the direction the administration and board would want to go into. So let's summarize the 2021 budget. The summary is depicted there. The 2019-20 budget is, current year's budget is $19.9 million. We decreased this year's budget by 3.3%. This year's budget is down almost $665,000 from whatever it is today. That 3.3% is significant. However, what we did have to add to next year's budget is our first major bond payments for the $24 million bond issue that was approved a few years ago. And that bond issue payment will be a little over $2 million. That will be, as you'll see later on, offset by state aid, which will cover most of that because you will be getting the merger aid for all of the bond work that's taking place. So we're talking about a superintendent's proposed budget, a board's budget for $21.3 million, $21,297,061, an increase of $1.3 million or 6.7% after adding the bond issue expense that we have to address. If we look at that budget by some major categories, where is all of the money in this budget? Well, wages and benefits is almost 59% of the budget. Supplies and equipment, a very small part, 3.7%. Contractual items, that includes everything from energy, such as electric, heat, general insurance, repairs from outside that we have to contract for, and just about every other cost that we contract for. That's 9%. BOCES service is a large part of our budget. Since being a small rural district, we do rely on BOCES to share services. Parts of people they provide, staff development, some instructional support, and it's aided at 60-70% depending on the service that we get back from those costs. Debt service is 11.9%. That's up because of the new bond issue. But if you take a look at that, we are a people organization. Between wages and benefits and debt service, we're talking about 70% of our budget going towards people costs and paying the debt off of our buildings, although much of it will be offset by state aid. Looking at that as in a pie graph format, you'll see debt service is 12%, BOCES service is 17%, two of the major parts, and of course, wages and benefits almost 58%. Small amounts for contractual supplies and equipment. By regulations, we are required to break the budget down into three different parts: administrative part, program part, and capital part. Capital part basically is all of the operations and maintenance, various projects that take place, that as well. The administrative part is really this administrative support in the district. Program is almost 66%. And that should make you feel good because that's the instructional program. That's where all the teaching and learning takes place. That's all that goes on in the elementary school and the junior, senior high school. So the major portion of our budget deals with kids. Also, we have another side of the budget called the income side, the revenue side, if you will. And our local non-tax areas that we receive money, such as investments, things of that sort, 342,000. Our reserve funds, we're tapping for $400,000 for next year as we did this year. So our total local revenues, including the reserve funds, is $742,800. Our state aid is almost $15.4 million. That's the item that will come under scrutinization by the governor, if not at the end of June, in December. If that goes down, then you're going to have to balance the expenditure side of this budget. Fund balance, that, in other words, money that we did not spend this year, we will be giving back to the voters next year. We're estimating that to be $200,000. Again, monies from this year will be returned to the voters, tune of $200,000. Property tax levy, almost $5 million. So you can see our major sources of revenue are obviously state aid and property taxes. Very good portion in state aid, almost 4 times the property tax levy. So there's our revenue side that balances things. If you notice, the tax levy increase is only a little over $18,000, very small, 0.37%. Just under 0.4% is an increase in the tax levy. One of the smallest in a number of years, over many years. Looking at that in a pie graph format, you can see fund balance is a very small part. You can see the major portions, again, our property tax levy and state aid, which is the greatest portion, of course. 72% of our budget comes from the state of New York in terms of state aid, and 23% from our taxpayers of our school district. If you take a look at the history of our tax levy over the years, you'll see that taxes in 14-15 decreased by 1%. 15-16, it was 0%. 16-17, a 0% increase in levy as well. And the same for 17-18. So 3 years of no increase in the tax levy whatsoever, after a decrease of 1% the year after the merger. In 18-19, there was a 1% increase in the tax levy. This current year, a 3% increase. And for next year, less than 0.4%. Very, very small increase in the levy for next school year. Again, summarizing the budget. Our budget for 1920 is $19,954,357. The proposed budget, which includes the payment for the $24 million bond issue, is $21,297,061. Dollar increase of a little over $1.3 million, or 6.7%. However, when you look at the tax levy, since we're getting a lot of aid on the construction and on that additional bond payment, our tax levy is only going up $18,000, as I indicated earlier. Again, just under 0.4%. Give you a little history on the tax on the true value in the school district, going back to 13-14. You'll see in 2021, projected for next year, estimated, the tax on true value will be $15.36. Other than 1920 or 17-18 anyway, it's the lowest tax. 1598 was in 15-16. So it's one of the lowest tax rates on true value over several years. 8 years, actually. So I'll give some people an idea of where they are with the tax rate on true value. And you'll see it's considerably less than this current year. So what are we voting on June 9th? First proposition is, shall the Board of Education be authorized to establish a reserve fund known as the Capital Reserve Fund for Transportation, not to exceed $5 million. Without getting into a lot of detail, this is a fund that's used to purchase buses. Buses cannot be purchased from that fund unless voters approve use of the fund for that money, which is what Proposition 2 is about. It's asking the voters to approve an amount not to exceed $208,000 for the purchase of a 65 passenger and a 30 passenger school bus. So once again, it's a fund that allows us to purchase buses without having a direct impact on the taxpayer in terms of increasing their taxes, and again, requires the approval of the taxpayer to use that money to purchase the bus. So let's remember to vote on June 9th. It's by absentee ballot only. And those absentee ballots must be turned in by 5:00 p.m., either via US mail or dropped off at the district office in a lockbox that you'll find in the little foyer area out there. The first proposition, again, establishing a capital reserve fund for transportation. The second proposition, authorizing the district to purchase 2 buses out of its current reserve fund, and also election of 2 board members. The thing we have to keep in mind, it's been a challenging year, as many of us know. And our students have already taken a step back since March. And our hope is for them to be able to return to more of a normal educational plan and not have to return to diminished opportunities next year. That's why this budget has no significant cuts in program or staff. We expect to go forward with the same programs next year as we have this year. Keep our fingers crossed in terms of any further cuts by the state of New York. That's the only thing that could really impact the delivery of services for this district. So just keep in mind, remember, this budget is about, and this district is about, teaching and learning. It's a business that deals with kids, and every child is important, and every year is important to every child. So we thank you, and again, if you have any questions, please feel free to email them to either myself or the clerk, Stephanie.bonk@oesj.org, or certainly call, leave a voicemail if no one answers, and I'll assure you someone will get back to you. Thank you.
All right. So I do see, I was checking out the live stream as we were doing it, and I do see that, with anything, we're still in a learning process. So for the 6 people watching right now, there was, if you want a copy of tonight's presentation, please contact the district clerk, like Joe said, because he was going over a presentation that you couldn't see on YouTube. So
Will be placed on our webpage also.
And it'll be placed on our webpage, the same presentation. So feel free to look that up. And Steph, did we get any questions in? Any budget questions?
There was one gentleman that called today. I had provided him with the percentage increase in tax rate, and then Joe spoke with him also as well. That was.
All right, so Joe's fielded one question, and I don't know how long we should keep this public hearing open.
Is there board questions?
Is there any questions from the school board? Nothing. Let me just double check my email. So having said that, and having done our public hearing, and this will be available in a recorded copy as well,
Yes.
just like tonight's board meeting.
Yep.
As of tomorrow,
Yep.
that'll be
As soon as
available
I-
on a recorded
as soon as it's available.
video. And you just check my other stuff here quick. What's the wrong one? All out. So having said that, can I get a motion to conclude the public hearing?
I'll make a motion.
Sarah with the first.
Second.
June with the second. Any discussion or objection? Vote to adjourn the public hearing.
Yes. Yes.
Any-
Yes.
Any noes?
No.
All right,
Right.
7-0, motion carried. I don't think there was any noes. There was something going on. So now we're gonna go right into the regular meeting. So I'm just getting to the agenda of tonight's regular meeting. And I'll call that meeting to order at 6:31 PM on the 2nd of June, 2020. I think everybody's still here. We'll do a new call to order, so we'll just check on everybody here, and evacuation procedures are out our door to the left, We already did the Pledge of Allegiance. We'll just do one more roll call, and then we're gonna start this meeting with an executive session, so anybody that's watching on a live feed, that feed is gonna go away, and it'll come back up in about 15 to 20 minutes. And when this is all recorded, there'll be that pause in it, so. Again, we're gonna start this meeting, go into an executive session, which will pause the live feed and pause the recording, and then we'll restart the meeting. So, Steph, let's get a roll call before I ask for a motion to go into executive.
Dean Handy,
Here.
Jeremy Brundage,
Here.
Jeremy Brundage. All right, he's here.
I see.
Leah Clark,
Here.
Sarah Barnes,
Here.
Suzanne Sammons,
Here.
Shelley Walrath,
Here.
Chad Barnes,
Here.
Joseph Natal,
Here.
Adam Harris,
Here.
Billy Joe Stallman, here. Janine Kariga,
Here.
Ted Kariga,
Here.
Kyle O'Brien,
Here.
Kyle O'Brien, okay, Greg Roth,
Here.
Jeff Swartz,
Here.
Stephanie Bonk here.
Okay. So again, I'm gonna ask for a motion here to go into executive. All the administrators, like Mr. and Mrs. Krieger that we have on there, and Kyle O'Brien, there may be some hiccups booting it back up, but we'll get it booted back up here. We're gonna pause the recordings. We're gonna, turn off the live stream, and we'll restart that when we restart the meeting, and we'll make sure we got Mr. and Mrs. Krieger and Kyle O'Brien and everybody else when we get back going in the regular session. So having said that, can I get a motion to go into executive to discuss a specific employment and personnel issue?
I'll move the motion. I'll
So I
second.
got, Sarah with the first and Shelley with the second. Any discussion on that?
No.
Vote to go into executive.
Yeah, we're going into executive, but gotta make sure everybody's off that needs to be off. Yes.
We will. We're gonna make sure on this end, Dean. So you just hold tight. So let's make. You guys are still on here. Okay, so let's vote. Yes.
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 Any no's? All right, we were.